VHS static. A dark room. A low guitar riff loops. This is the start of something new. It wasn't clean. It wasn't pretty. A feeling that had no name yet. Early 90s, grunge and alt-rock filled the air. It was sad. It was slow. Out in the dust of Bakersfield, something else brewed. It was angrier. It was heavier. Born from boredom and frustration, from the heat and isolation of a place that felt forgotten. Not Seattle, not Los Angeles. This was different. A small group of musicians made loud, raw noise. Korn led the way, just kids trying to make sense of their world. They twisted the heavy guitars they loved, tuned them down until they sounded broken. The bass became a weapon. I was there. I saw it happen. I helped make it happen. My job as a producer was to capture lightning in a bottle. With bands like Korn, the lightning was already there. It was crackling in the room. My role was to get it onto tape without killing the energy. We didn't want it to sound perfect. We wanted it to sound real. I pushed them. I pushed Jonathan to go to those dark places in his head. I wanted him to feel the words, not just sing them. The result was a vocal performance that was more like a therapy session. It was uncomfortable. It was powerful. That raw nerve became the core of the nu metal sound. We recorded fast. We recorded loud. The goal was to capture the live energy, the feeling of a band locked in and about to explode. The down-tuned guitars were key. We used 7-string guitars to get those low, guttural notes. It wasn't about complex chords. It was about the riff, the chug, the weight. The rhythm section was just as important. Deftones brought a different color to the palette. They were from Sacramento, but they were part of that same early wave. They had the heaviness, the aggression, but they also had something else. They had beauty, a brutal scream, a beautiful ethereal melody. Nu metal wasn't born in a vacuum. It was a hybrid monster, stitched together from the parts of other genres. It grew from many places: heavy, down-tuned riffs of metal, rhythmic pulse of hip-hop, slap bass grooves from funk, cold, mechanical textures of industrial music. This mix was volatile. It was exciting. Fast, aggressive beat, dark, brooding mood, break things, dance at the same time. It was a sound for a confused and angry generation. The fusion of rap and metal was one of the most important parts. It wasn't the first time it had been done, but nu metal made it central. Rappers, metalheads, they found new common ground. DJs, beat loops, became part of the band. This wasn't just about a rapper guesting on a rock track. It was about creating a new musical language where both styles could coexist and create something stronger. The 7-string guitar was the weapon of choice. It allowed bands to go lower, to find a heaviness that a standard 6-string couldn't reach. The tuning was often dropped way down, creating a thick, sludgy tone that was almost seismic. The riffs weren't about flashy solos or technical wizardry. They were simple, rhythmic, and percussive. The guitar became another part of the rhythm section, locking in with the bass and drums to create an unstoppable groove. This new sonic vocabulary defined the genre. It was a deliberate move away from the traditions of classic rock and metal. Rejected soaring vocals. Rejected epic guitar solos. Rejected fantasy-based lyrics. Instead, it focused on rhythm. Instead, it focused on texture. Instead, it focused on raw, street-level emotion. Then, it all exploded. The sound we had been building in dark studios and small clubs suddenly broke out into the open. It went from the underground to the mainstream almost overnight. Two bands were the catalyst for this explosion: Limp Bizkit's Slipknot. They pushed it to its absolute limit. They were the faces of nu metal's second wave. The fuse had been lit. Limp Bizkit brought the party. They made the rap metal formula bigger, brasher, more infectious. Fred Durst's rap vocals were front and center, backed by Wes Borland's huge, inventive riffs. Their songs had massive hooks and undeniable beats. They were loud, fun, designed to make massive crowds jump in unison. They embraced the image: baggy pants, the red baseball cap, dyed hair. It became a uniform for a new generation. They weren't subtle. They were a sledgehammer. and they smashed their way onto MTV and radio playlists everywhere. Slipknot was the other side of the coin. They brought the horror. They were 9 guys from Iowa in masks and boiler suits. Their music was a chaotic, relentless assault. It was faster, more aggressive, and more terrifying than what had come before. With 3 drummers, 2 guitarists, a DJ, and a sampler, their sound was a dense wall of noise. Their live shows were pure, unadulterated chaos. They gave the scene a darker edge, more theatrical, and more intense. They showed nu metal could be more than anger. It could be pure, primal fear. This was the moment nu metal became a phenomenon. It wasn't just a music genre anymore. It was a cultural movement. The sound was everywhere, and it was getting louder. The explosion was thrilling. It was exciting. But it was also the beginning of the end, because things that explode that fast often leave a mess behind. Woodstock. 1999 was supposed to be a celebration. It was the 30th anniversary of a legendary festival. It had a huge lineup. Many of the biggest nu metal bands were on the bill. The crowds were enormous. The energy was electric. For a moment, it felt like the peak. Like our raw, angry underground sound had conquered the world. But then things started to go wrong. The vibe began to shift. The heat, the high prices, the poor conditions. Together, they made a pressure cooker. The media needed a villain, and they found one in the music. When riots broke out, when fires were set, when the peaceful vibe of the original Woodstock was replaced with chaos and violence, blame landed on the bands and their fans. Stories painted nu metal as mindless aggression. They pointed at the lyrics. They pointed at the mosh pits. They pointed at the angry energy of the music. It was a simple, easy narrative to swallow. The music was loud and angry, so it must be responsible. The media narrative was set in stone. It didn't matter that the problems were complex. It didn't matter that organizers made huge mistakes. Nu metal became the scapegoat. The event left a deep, ugly scar on the genre's public image. It pushed skeptics into outright hostility. The controversy hung over the genre like a dark cloud. It forced defensiveness into the scene. It became harder to celebrate the music without answering for a few people's actions. It was a defining moment, just not the one anyone wanted. The mainstream's fascination with nu metal began to curdle into fear and judgment. Even with the Woodstock controversy, the genre's commercial power was undeniable. And then Linkin Park arrived. They took the nu metal formula and polished it for a massive global audience. Their 2000 debut album, Hybrid Theory, was a perfectly engineered piece of music. It balanced the heavy riffs and the hip-hop verses with huge melodic choruses that were impossible not to sing along to. The dual vocals of Chester Bennington and Mike Shinoda, one screaming with pain, the other rapping with cool precision, created a dynamic that was instantly compelling. They were the complete package. Hybrid Theory was a monster. It sold millions and millions of copies. It made rock and hip-hop work on mainstream radio in a way no one had before. The production was clean and powerful. The hooks were undeniable. Linkin Park's sound reached fans who had never listened to Korn or Deftones. They brought the genre to soccer moms and high school kids who weren't part of the underground scene. The look of the era was just as important as the sound. It was a uniform for the youth. Fans wore baggy jeans, cargo pants, oversized hoodies, chain wallets, spiky dyed hair. Brands like JNCO and Audio became synonymous with the scene. It was a loud, bold, and instantly recognizable style. It was anti-fashion, a rejection of the slick, polished look of pop stars. It was about comfort, utility, and a sense of belonging to a tribe. You could spot a nu metal fan from a block away. This visual identity helped solidify the genre as a full-blown cultural movement. The sound of the mainstream era was also refined. The 7-string guitars and drop tunings were still there, but the production was often slicker. The raw edges of the early records were smoothed out for radio. The mix of live instruments with electronic samples, loops, and turntables became more sophisticated. It felt modern and rough at the same time. This was the sound that defined the early 2000s. It was on the radio, on TV, in movies, and at every school dance. Nu metal wasn't just a genre anymore, it was the wallpaper of popular culture. It had reached its absolute peak of visibility and influence. What goes up must come down, and, the same speed that carried nu metal to the top of the charts also hastened its fall from grace. The genre became a victim of its own success. It had become so popular, so quickly, that the market was flooded. Every record label was looking for their own version of Korn or Linkin Park. The scene became crowded with copycat bands who mimicked the sound and the look, without understanding the feeling behind it. The market was saturated with similar-sounding records, and fans started to get tired of the formula. Then the critical backlash began. It was brutal. Critics who had once been cautiously interested now turned on the genre with a vengeance. They mocked the angst-ridden lyrics, the simplistic riffs, and the fashion. The word cringe became the go-to descriptor. It was used to dismiss the emotional sincerity of the music as juvenile and embarrassing. The same raw emotion that I had worked so hard to capture on those early records was now being ridiculed as melodrama. Liking nu metal became a punchline. It was no longer cool. Fans who had grown up with the music started to feel ashamed. As they got older, they were told that the music they loved was unsophisticated and silly. Many moved on, hiding their old CDs in the back of a closet. The genre lost its edge. It went from being the voice of the outsider to being a target for jokes. The baggy pants and chain wallets that were once a badge of honor became a source of embarrassment. The backlash was not just about the music, it was a cultural rejection of the entire aesthetic. Several factors fueled this turn. The overexposure was a big one. You couldn't escape the sound, and familiarity bred contempt. The scandals, like the fallout from Woodstock '99, had permanently damaged the genre's reputation. And frankly, some of the bands that came later in the wave were just not very good. They were chasing a trend, and their music lacked the soul and the honesty of the pioneers. The combination of market saturation, critical scorn, and a changing cultural tide created a perfect storm. The nu metal empire began to crumble. By the mid-2000s, the party was over. The tide had turned completely. Radio and MTV had moved on to the next big thing: indie rock, garage rock revival, emo. The musical landscape shifted. The heavy, groovy sound of nu metal was replaced by jangly guitars, more introspective, less aggressive vocals. The cultural spotlight swung away, leaving the scene in the shadows. Bands that had been packing arenas were now struggling to fill smaller venues. The decline was swift and decisive. Many flagship bands either broke up or changed their sound. They could see the writing on the wall. To survive, they had to evolve. Some added more traditional metal elements. Others moved toward alternative rock or electronic music. They shed the nu metal label like a snake sheds its skin. The core sound began to disappear from the mainstream. The movement lost its leaders and momentum. The industry that built the trend was now abandoning it. Record labels dropped bands. A&R, who chased the next Limp Bizkit, were now hunting the next Strokes. The machine that built the genre was now tearing it down. Without mainstream support, the scene was forced back underground. The party was over and the cleanup had begun. For a long time, nu metal looked like a footnote in rock history. Yet the sound never completely died. A dedicated core kept the flame alive. They kept playing the music, making records, and touring. They played to smaller crowds, but those crowds were passionate. They were the true believers who had never cared about whether the music was cool or not. They loved it for what it was: heavy, emotional, and real. This wilderness period mattered. It stripped commercial baggage and reconnected the genre to raw roots. The fade was a painful but necessary winter before a new spring. Music moves in cycles. What was once old and embarrassing can become new and exciting again. After years in the wilderness, a new generation started to discover the sound. Kids who were too young to experience the first wave were finding those old records online. They heard the raw energy, the heavy grooves, the unfiltered emotion, and it connected with them. They didn't have the baggage of the backlash. To them, it wasn't cringe. It was just powerful, heavy music. Social media platforms like TikTok and YouTube helped old songs find new life. This new interest inspired a new wave of artists. A new gen movement began to take shape. They took the core elements of the old sound: low-tuned guitars, hip-hop rhythms, screaming, and clean vocals, and started to experiment. They weren't just copying the past, they were updating it. They mixed nu metal with modern sounds: trap, hyperpop, industrial electronica. They used modern production tools to make the low end hit even harder and to add new layers of texture. This new wave of nu metal is different. It's more self-aware. The artists know the history of the genre, including its mistakes. There's less focus on image and more on musical craftsmanship. The lyrics often explore new themes, reflecting the anxieties of a new generation. Bands like Spiritbox, Tetrarch, Code Orange are pushing the sound in new directions. They honor the past while forging their own path. They keep the heart of the old sound, but give it a fresh, modern body. The revival is also being guided by the fans who grew up with the first wave. They are now the writers, the promoters, the tastemakers who are championing the new bands. They remember the feeling of hearing those first Korn Deftones records. They see that same spirit in the new artists. The internet has created a global community where old and new fans can share music and celebrate the genre's history. This combination of youthful energy and veteran passion is what's driving the revival. The sound is back, and it feels more vital and diverse than ever. The story of nu metal is a story of cycles. It's about how a sound can rise from the dirt, conquer the world, be torn down, and then slowly, patiently, be reborn. It shows how fashion and media opinion move in waves. What was once ridiculed can become revered. What was once loud and raw can be refined and reinterpreted for a new era. The journey of this music is a testament to its staying power. It was too powerful, too influential to simply fade away forever. Its echo was always there, waiting to be heard again. The legacy of the genre is clear. It permanently changed the DNA of heavy music. It made the 7-string guitar a staple in the metal world. It normalized the fusion of rock and hip-hop, paving the way for countless artists who blend genres today. It showed that aggressive music could also be deeply emotional and melodic. Many modern bands, even those outside the nu metal scene, owe a debt to the experiments of the 90s and the 2000s. Its influence is woven into the fabric of modern rock music, whether people acknowledge it or not. The story is not a simple one. The music had its brilliant peaks and its dark, controversial moments. It gave a powerful voice to a generation of young listeners who felt angry and alienated. It also faced harsh criticism and became a symbol of commercial excess. Its image was tangled with real-world events and media narratives. Yet through it all, the core sound, that heavy, rhythmic, emotional pulse, kept drawing artists and fans back. It was a sound that refused to die because the feeling behind it was real. In the end, nu metal shows the power of a new idea. It shows how blending different styles can create a strong, singular voice. It shows how youth culture can shape music, fashion, and the world around it. It shows how a genre can fall out of favor and then claw its way back, stronger and smarter than before. This is the arc. From the small, dusty rooms in Bakersfield to the stadium stages and the fires of controversy. From decline and ridicule to a patient and powerful rebirth. The sound has changed, but its heart beats on. Follow Sticky Geek.